Okay, so you finally decided to ditch touch drive. You were ready to get away from all of the casual nonsense and try and compete with the pros with manual drive. So whether you're just making that decision now or you've been experimenting with manual drive for a little while and you want to maximize your experience with manual drive, in today's video we are going to go over some tips and tricks to make sure that you are the most comfortable with manual drive so you can start climbing those leaderboards in multiplayer and get the top 1% in events. Now before we get into all of the details, I do want to mention I'm not going to go over specific things like airspeed tricks, floaty drifts, all that sort of nonsense. That is for a more advanced in-depth tutorial video that I may make later on. This is for a more general, broad overview of what you need to do to get the most out of your manual drive experience. So the first thing I want to go over is a mistake that many new players to manual drive seem to make, and that's choosing the incorrect control scheme. Now, don't get me wrong, every single control scheme / method has its own pros and cons. And because now that we have cross-platform, you can choose to play on any device you want, whether it's a controller, keyboard, phone, tablet, whatever you want to play with, you have access to it. And that's one of the cool things about modern Asphalt. However, after all of these years with different control schemes, I still use tilt to steer. Why? Because it's the most comfortable for me personally. And so that's what I want to emphasize. Yes, playing with a controller may be technically superior to what I'm using with tilt to steer. However, because I've been using it for so long, my best lap times, my best multiplayer races are all done on tilt to steer. Now, again, that's not to say that tilt to steer is superior. It's just to say that it's the most comfortable for me. So if you have access to multiple devices, maybe a controller or a keyboard, play a couple of races on each one and see which one feels most natural to you. Again, I've used the metaphor of playing tilt to steer like using a real life steering wheel, where it makes it feel a little more tactile and easier to control in terms of your muscle memory. So for me, it's just the most comfortable to use tilt to steer. But again, some players may feel more comfortable on controller, some may feel more better on a keyboard. Now later on, once you are used to that control scheme that feels more natural to you, you might want to experiment with more technically superior control schemes like keyboard or controller. That's up to you to decide. However, if you want to get up and going with manual drive and not have a frustrating experience, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to use the control scheme that is the most comfortable for you so you have a natural experience. Next up, something that again is a little bit subjective. However, I found that if you start with the action cam in the settings, that is going to give you the best experience for manual drive. Now, in most of my videos, I have the close camera on because it makes the game feel more cinematic and gives me a better sense of speed. Again, a more personal decision. However, there is a reason why most pro players use the action camera. If you'll notice, the elevated position and wide field of view means it's way easier to see the road ahead and any upcoming obstacles and turns that you need to account for. Again, there's a reason why pretty much every single pro player uses the action camera. Now right now you're seeing a side-by-side comparison. You can see the car going through both the action cam and the close cam, and you'll notice with the action cam, again, you have that higher position which gives you a more elevated look on the road ahead of you. It also means that you can see different cars and their position relative to where your position is at. This makes it a lot easier for multiplayer to try to avoid getting knocked down. So again, I would recommend that you start with the action cam because I think it will give you a better scope of what the game should feel like in terms of how to adjust to manual drive. And when you're more comfortable, maybe you can switch back to close cam if that's what you prefer. Again, that's what I use when it comes to just normal gameplay because I feel like it gives me the more cinematic experience with the best sense of speed. However, if I am going to do a competition like a qualifier for an esports league or I'm playing in Legend League, most likely I'll switch back to action cam because I feel like it gives me a competitive advantage. Now, I've mentioned muscle memory a couple of times throughout this video, mostly in the control schemes. However, what I do want to mention is that muscle memory is really important to getting used to manual drive. Of course, now you're no longer just making one swipe decision to tell where your car is going. Every single second of every frame of every race, you are in control. So you want to feel the most comfortable. And so for that, I always recommend using your preferred cars consistently so that you get used to the handling profile of your favorite car. What am I talking about? Well, in multiplayer, you obviously have access to many different cars depending on which league you're starting out with. And in my opinion, I think you should choose a car and stick to it for the duration of the multiplayer season. Obviously, you don't want to stick with just a Huracan once you get into Legend League. What I mean by this is choose maybe a couple of different cars that you're most comfortable with and decide that's how you want your multiplayer journey to be. For example, in this video, you're going to see majority of the gameplay with the Lycan Hypersport, and that's because I played with this car over and over and over again, which means the handling profile is now baked into my muscle memory. Because I've used this car so many times, I no longer need to think about how the car is going to handle. I just simply point my eyes in the direction of where I want the car to go, and my hands will adjust based off the tilt to steer sensitivity that I have, and I'm so used to it that it just feels like driving a car in real life. It feels natural. So pick a car that you want to become comfortable in. Maybe it is something like a Huracan and a Vanda. Those are easier cars to get used to because they do have more forgiving handling models, but stick to a specific set of cars that you feel comfortable with. That way you get used to that same car over and over again. That way every single time you try and get out and practice manual drive, you're not having to think about the handling profile of the car because you already are used to it. I hope this muscle memory tip makes a little sense. It's something where if you're going to use a tool for a job, you want to make sure you use the same tool over and over again. That way you're worried more about actually doing the job correctly rather than worrying about the tool that you use. That should hopefully make a little more sense because I've seen a lot of players complain about how manual drive is a little confusing because they just try all of these different cars and none of them stick. But in my opinion, if you want to learn manual drive, you have to stick to a consistent template. You have to learn one car after another slowly so that you don't get overwhelmed with all of the different cars' handling profiles. Alright, so the last tip I have for this video, just wrapping things up, is to learn from other players. Now, if you're watching this video, chances are you're in the correct headspace to start performing this. However, there are plenty of more guides that you can watch on YouTube specifically for different laps that you might encounter on different tracks. For example, if you play on Paris a lot, you can choose to watch on YouTube different guides to all of the tracks on Paris. The other thing you might want to pay attention to is, let's say you play a game in multiplayer, you're climbing up the leaderboards, you're in Platinum League, you finish in 5th place, not the best performance, but you notice the player in first place has the same car as you, yet maybe they finished well ahead of you. You can always go back into the replay system and watch their lap in real time. You can get a sense for the decisions that they start to make when they use nitro, when they shockwave, when they drift, all of those things. And of course, you can also do that on YouTube guides like I've mentioned before. It's a great way to maybe get some different routes that you might want to try. That is one of the great things about Asphalt, and when you start learning manual drive, is that the track is whatever you want to make it to be. You can go wherever you want to. You're not limited to only the routes decided by touch drive. For example, I mentioned earlier in this video, there are different airspeed tricks, things like floaty drifts and nitro punches, but in addition to those things, there are different routes that you can take, what we like to call driving lines, racing lines, that sort of thing. And if you pay attention to that, that can really shave off many seconds of your lap time, even if you didn't notice it before. So just watching and learning from other players is a great resource to let you know maybe if there's a different route that you can take that'll save you some extra time. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this video. Let me know in the comment section down below if you have any other tips. Maybe you're also beginning to figure out your way around manual drive and you want to let other players know of something you found out that's really improved your times. I'll be sure to pin and like any of the different things that I see in the comment section down below. We're all helping each other out here. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more Asphalt content in the future. But anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed and I will see you all later.